Welcome, fellow travellers. I'm Ham, the Guinness Gamer, and I'm joining Chibi and Vertec at the Golden Feather this evening. Come on in, grab a seat and a pint, and let's share our tales of adventure and shenanigans.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Golden Feather Tavern, where your hosts, Chibi and Vertec, discuss Ashes of Creation and the important topics spoken about within the Ashes community. Every week we invite you, the viewer, and a special guest to pull up a chair, grab a pint, and join the conversation with us. Today is the 20th of October, 2023, and the title of today's episode is that we finally have Guinness on tap, and that is because our special traveling bard joining us today is Guinness Gamer. And how are you today, friend?
I'm good. I'm great, actually. Glad to be here. How are yourselves?
Doing pretty good.
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. And see. So that takes away the question I was gonna ask Chibi if she's doing all right today, but you stole it right out from under me. My goodness.
Oh, my apologies.
I tell you. all good. So, if you don't mind, real quick, just in case anybody here has not heard of you or what you do, what do you do for content and what brings you around the Ashes?
Well, I decided about 6 months ago to start doing content, I suppose, mostly on YouTube, of the games that I enjoy, but of course I realized pretty soon that I could also do content of games that I know I'm going to enjoy in the future. So I started to delve into Ashes content, and mostly because it's one of probably the most excited I've been about a game in a long time, and I hope I'm not disappointed on launch, but I'm looking forward to Alpha 2 just like the rest of us.
Absolutely, counting down the days.
Yeah.
Counting down the days to an unknown date in the future, but at least we have a year.
Yes, I'm happy that was finally put out there. No more speculating, guys. No more speculating. I said they'd only give us dates when they're sure.
Yeah.
Now we have 365 days to choose from.
Well, I have a theory about that, but I suppose we'll get into that later of when it should be. But yeah, we'll get to that in time.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And
No more rain checks.
What's that?
Right. Sir Huntington said no more rain checks.
Oh yeah. Please no. So what brought you some interest into Ashes specifically? What was the first thing that really made you say, I'm into this. This is the thing I want to go into.
Well, I first came across the game, I suppose, about 3-4 years ago, and I suppose like a lot of people kind of thought, well, that's going to be a long time before that's ready, kind of put it on the back burner and didn't think about it for a while. But in about a year ago I started to get into it more and start to follow the live streams, and I realized then it sort of all happened coincidentally at the same time, where I decided to start doing content on other games, and then I was getting more and more into Ashes and the live streams and getting really excited for it, and I kind of thought, well, why not merge the two of them together and start to do a bit of content on it, because their live streams are very informative and they're full of content, as we all know, and I figured that there's probably bound to be some people out there that are interested in the game and will play it on launch, but maybe doesn't have the time to watch a 2-hour live stream at the end of a month. Particularly the bigger ones. The first one I did was the Freehold one, and it was a hefty one. There's a lot of content in it, so I just thought if I could summarize all the important information in those videos for people, that maybe it would help some people out and maybe attract more people to the game. Not that they need that, because I think what the devs are doing is fantastic, and even the availability of the information is something I've never come across before with any game. We all know a lot of developers keep their cards close to their chest, and then I think we've all been burned by games before on launch that haven't been haven't been what they promised, and I feel like a lot of that's to do with a lack of player testing and a lack of player feedback, and that's something that Intrepid definitely are doing well, and that's what actually gives me the most hope for the game. And therefore, when I have hope for the game and enjoyment, or hopefully future enjoyment for it, then I'm very willing to do content on it.
Nice. Agreed on pretty much all counts there. And by the way, since Vertec is a blockhead sometimes, the jerk, we've been trying to shift up the order of things we do here lately. So, Chibi, why don't you go ahead and give us that episode overview, and then we'll get back to talking to our guest here.
Okay. So for those of you especially joining us later who like to know what we're talking about in today's episode, besides getting to know our guest, we will also be talking about rebirth and rebuilding. So what happens when you respawn and what happens after a siege, player conflict, bards, gods, and the usual random topics from chat. But
those never happen. Those are a myth.
Never. Absolutely never happen. We'd never have a plethora of questions from chat. But getting back to the guest. I guess I will ask the question next. What is one thing that you would like people to know about you in terms of the type of content that you are intending to make? If anybody were to take one thing away from this.
Well, as I said earlier, I do focus on a number of different games, but when it comes to Ashes specifically, I think I'm gonna try and do as concise and succinct content as I can for people, as I said earlier, people that are maybe a bit too busy to watch the full live streams and maybe don't have the money or the time to pay for Alpha 2 specifically. I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of Alpha 2 content, but what I'm approaching it as, I'm very much approaching Alpha 2 as a tester as opposed to a gamer. I'm sure that's what Steven said that Intrepid obviously wanted. It's planned to be a fun experience, but mostly it's a testing experience, which I'm looking forward to a lot because I've never done that before. I've played a lot of early access games and betas in the past, but I've never really approached them as a proper tester. It's just been as a gamer, so that's what I intend on doing. And whether I'm doing videos that ultimately I might submit to Intrepid as ideas and thoughts and how they can improve, I'll probably do those, and then I'll obviously do videos for people to watch as well on YouTube. People like, as I say, that don't have access to the testing themselves. But generally, I do. I'm not gonna lie, I make it up as I go along. And I'll see what I feel like doing, and it'll be ultimately what my heart's in. What my heart decides, because I'm not overly doing it for money. I'm just sort of doing it as a hobby, so I'll do what I enjoy doing, and if kind of attention or views come along with that, then fantastic. But if not, at least I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Indeed. I got distracted by chat there. Well, I saw that. What did I miss? What did you see?
Oh, nothing.
Nope.
I didn't even notice it.
Good. We're carrying on.
And we go on.
It's okay. I'll watch the VOD.
All right. So it sounds like you might be doing a little bit of like some quick guides and some quick dives into stuff, that type of thing.
And intending on it, I'll see. Like I'm in a fairly large what do you call it? Community, I suppose, that most of which seem to have paid for Alpha 2. So I'm hoping that will mean that I'll be able to delve into certain content, maybe like mayorship and things like that might be difficult to become otherwise, because you're not going to get a mayor of a node and build up a node by yourself. So I'm hoping to dive into all aspects of the game, like everything that's available when it's available in Alpha 2. So I'll maybe once Alpha 2 launches, or once we have a bit more information about it, I'll do notes about what I'm going to delve into or try to delve into and cover first. And then after that I will follow obviously their updates closely, and whenever they're releasing new content for Alpha 2, then I'm gonna obviously focus on that, and whether we'll see what happens, like whether they give us any kind of cheat way to the likes of mayorship and stuff like that. Obviously, if they want things tested, they're not gonna wait 5 weeks before or 2 months before any of the nodes are up to a level where they need a mayor. I imagine they're gonna fast track some of that stuff, and just hoping to get a direct line to Steven, so I'll get fast tracked to all the important content.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah,
I like it.
big
I like
plans.
I have like the most important question that everybody is anticipating you answering, and that is, who makes mead better, us or the dwarves?
This is no matter what way I answer that, I'm gonna create enemies.
No.
I mean, I'm just saying we have the power of teamwork here between two different cultures, so it's got to make it better, right? It enriches it more than just a really long ancient culture that's been doing it since forever.
Absolutely, I'll say yes. I'll go with yes.
Just yes.
Yeah. all I'll say is I like my mead to be ruby red with a big creamy top. If you can manage that, then you're winning in my
Viking's
book.
blood.
See, we can do there. And by the way, just because I don't think we acknowledged it in audio format, Abarat, thank you so much for the sub, and thanks for stopping by. It's been a little while. We missed you.
I know. Yeah, that was what you were last streaming. Ghoul blood, exactly. We introduced Sir Huntington to that one, I believe. That was really young.
Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe. I know we had it one of the times.
Yeah. On the topic of subs, real quick, we are 5 away from the final goal for a charity stream, by the way.
Almost there.
So if we get that before next weekend,
I have to play into a Souls-like.
Well, we chose it. Yep.
Yeah.
Hello, Never. Yep, I have to play Elden Ring if we get it. Heard my name, but my wife was chatting me up. Oh, I was saying that I think we introduced that to you, or we at least had it with you. The School Blood.
Yeah, Chibi, by the way, in case you guys haven't noticed, is not huge on the big action games and scary giant creatures and stuff like that. And high difficulty, high performance type things where you really gotta make every second count and get in every single like nitpick shot you can to take the boss down before it slaughters you. She's not big on those, so it's going to be quite entertaining. If we get that goal.
Animal Crossing.
It's a little bit different gameplay.
It's similar to Elden Ring, right?
Oh, absolutely. I go hard on that flower garden. And the cooking.
Oh my goodness. What to do? So, hey, but Guinness, since we are not yet in the age of ashes, we are in the age of all Abarat. Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you so
much. If there's one thing I know to be true, it's never cross animals, right? Quite good. Oh my gosh. Thank you so very much, Abarat. And welcome to all of our new patrons. We appreciate you. Are we able to move that a little bit out of the way? Instead of
yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Because I was doing those changes the other day, I wasn't able to get that one in place just yet.
I just don't like it covering the chat because I'm like, what if somebody says something important and I can't read it?
Nobody says anything important in here.
What?
Never.
Wow, rude. I'm on your side, chat. I'm on your side.
He's insulting everyone. It's okay. Not just
everything in here is important. You guys know we love you.
Oh my gosh. But thank you so very, very much, Abarat. And now I'm tortured to play Elden Ring during our charity stream next week.
It'll be amazing. I'm so looking forward to this.
True. Well, that's why he chose Elden Ring, because I guess there's a thing that you can do to like mod it so somebody else can play with you. So if I don't want to play by myself and I get too scared, you can join me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got
I'm speaking like I'm
multiplayer.
playing Phasmophobia or something.
Yeah, it's got multiplayer, but there's a mod to apparently make it more smooth. I don't know what that means exactly.
Right. Okay.
But
No,
someone
don't
said
be
you definitely
lying.
should get the mod for it.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Yeah.
So, Guinness, you are our guest.
and
And
I'm honored.
our guest's honorable duty is to pick the first topic. So, would you like to talk about rebirth and rebuilding, player conflict, or some of the random topics from the community first?
This is,
What you feeling?
I'm happy. I'm happy to go with rebirth and rebuilding. I think
Okay.
the Node live stream is still fairly fresh in my head, even though it's two live streams ago, was it? Soon to be 3 ago.
Yeah.
But it's just the last one. Yeah, that's the last big one that sticks out in my memory. So yeah, we'll go for that.
Okay. I think I'm supposed to be going into it without any tutorials. But I appreciate that, Nair.
Alright.
No, I'm being thrown into the deep end.
Excellent.
So,
The first death will be quick, I imagine.
yes. Death will be swift.
Yeah.
That may be the one that I was told would be the reason why Elden Ring is a better choice for a first timer.
Yeah.
Not going to give any clues as to which one it is, but I was told that it was definitely a tough one for first timers to the genre,
Okay.
but it's also still kind of difficult, but not
Well,
impossibly so. So
I guess to put it into perspective for anybody, if you've played what was that, Nier Automata?
Mhm.
I couldn't beat the first boss, so I gave up trying to play it. On easy. I couldn't beat it on easy.
That's similar to my Elden Ring experience, but don't let that put you off. I do intend on going back to it, but yeah.
Yeah.
nice.
I imagine you're going to see a different side of Chibi with Elden Ring.
It's gonna be fantastic.
But so
Might be shouting.
there's going to be probably tons of respawning. So at this point, respawn at closest point or at chosen point. Which do you like better for Ashes of Creation?
I was having a think about this, and I thought, at first I thought it wouldn't matter too much, and then I thought about PvP and gamers being what they are, and I think even with the corruption system, I do think if it's a set spawn, then leave yourself open to being camped over and over by somebody. If they kill you and then know where the closest spawn is and sprint to that, then they're gonna presumably have the power to just attack you on spawn then. Whereas if you get the choice, then I'd much prefer being able to choose, even if you're only choosing between 3 or 4 local ones as opposed to half the map. It still then leaves a bit of guesswork if they're looking to camp you, and i.e. if you have a choice of at least 3, they're not going to be able to. Now I say that I'm a PvPer at heart, I think, and I would kind of revel in those kind of conflicts, but just if you're a lower level and somebody at a higher level is being a bit of a jerk, it could really ruin the game for some players. It's the kind of thing like when you have a kind of a world where PvP is basically on all the time. It's something that the devs obviously need to be aware of, and they will be. I do think they'll go for choosing the point of respawn. I just think that the closest point's too easily manipulated, I suppose, by certain types of players that are attracted to PvP games.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm kind of caught on it myself because the closest spawn, when you die, you respawn at the closest point, is good for a few things. Because one, it does kind of force into point that the travel thing, where traveling is a meaningful, purposeful, and like important thing. So you can't say set your respawn point on one side of the map, planning to run all the way to the other side of the map to buy stuff, and
That's
then die and respawn to get all the way across the map instantly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I mean, all this being said, I know that they're already going to be like forcing it into, we are going to be respawning at the closest one if you're, you know, not corrupted, but a random one nearby if you are corrupted.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of being able to choose which one you go to as well. But I think they made the right choice in going to the nearest one. To be honest, as much as I do like to be able to choose where I respawn, I think just with the travel being important thing, I think that works maybe best.
Especially for bag runs.
Yeah. No, the only downside I can see is I think kind of what you were saying there, Guinness, where if somebody who's out there just to slay people in their traditional spot or whatever, and they know where the nearest respawn is, they could totally have somebody waiting there for you when you reappear.
Yeah.
Like, let's murder them here, you go get them at the respawn and see if they drop anything else or what have you, or just keep them there so that I can loot all their stuff and take my time here.
Yeah, although I suppose that does take an element of planning and coordination, which if they have that element of coordination, then maybe they deserve to get your stuff, or maybe you deserve to die twice. You know, if they're going to that kind of level, you know, of planning, maybe it's not such a bad thing. It's just as long as it can't be manipulated, I suppose, whatever they actually ultimately choose. Like, you could have an option of both, sort of, you know, where it's the closest point, you know, it's the closest point always in PvE circumstances, but maybe you get a choice in PvP circumstances. That could be something that they end up implementing, like, but you just don't want, no matter what they actually choose, you don't want anybody in any situation to be able to manipulate it, because ultimately players will do that, like, but then what they do is they sort of spoil the game for others by doing that, particularly when you're talking about PvP.
And I like the idea of being able to choose something. I'm not really sure how many spawn points there are to a specific area. So if there's a couple to an area and you're pretty close to them, I think I would like the ability to choose, for the PvP thing. I like what Nara says here. Maybe the first death is the closest point, but if you die in PvP, random for sure. And the reason why is in response to being camped for the nearest one. So being able to have a random respawn in PvP so somebody can't just camp you at the closest one. But Aberrat says Steven is super hard on the tabletop games as a DM. They're going to dial difficulty down for sure from what we initially see in Alpha 2. And then Sir Umsington says travel going to be super meaningful when you're in your caravan trying to outrun baddies. Come to my dealership and I'll hook you up with the right hooves to run in your wheels. It's tricky balancing allowing goods to be stolen while incentivizing good gatherers to stay in the game as well. Because I mean, we've seen it before with things like World of Warcraft, where somebody gets camped and then they get so frustrated because they can't do anything, they just log out. They just stay dead and they log out, and they don't come back for like a few hours or a couple of days, and that's the hard part. Because
or maybe they cancel their subscription,
right,
don't come back at all.
Exactly, and that's the part that I was gonna say is the hard part. Like, that's something that, you know, it's important that Intrepid gets that right, because otherwise, especially in an open world PvP where there is no toggling off combat, if something like that happens, that's definitely going to be something that affects people. Granted, yes, the griefer ends up getting more corruption and weaker, but that doesn't speak for whoever is potentially being griefed. You know, that person might just not enjoy that enough to just leave, like you said.
Exactly, and then obviously that's ultimately going to impact Intrepid's bottom line if they're losing that many people to that kind of thing. So they really, I agree with you, they really have to get that right when you're talking about PvP. And again, like you say, the the corruption mechanic is good, and it will reduce the amount of griefing from certain types of players, but it won't stop it completely. And there will be still level 50s running around killing a level 20 because it's funny, but then the impact that has on the level 20 could be that they leave. Especially if they've just started the game and they think, they're maybe already on the fence. And they're just like, you know what, if that's going to happen, I'm out and I'm not coming back, kind of thing.
That's a big potential.
I at least think that will happen to such a small degree, at least, that won't really be an issue. Won't really be like a giant thing that people are terribly worried about and make them really rage quit over the once in a while high level thing. I could totally be wrong, but I don't personally see it being an issue.
Why? But would you not see it because of the corruption system and how punishing that potentially is for players?
Yeah, because they're going to be ramping it up. And hey there, remember, by the way, and yeah, they actually confirmed Alpha 2 for 2024. They just haven't narrowed down a quarter yet. They'll let us know as we get closer. But yeah, I think because it's going to be more stiff based on the level difference, it's not going to be quite as many raffle stompers running around as beating down complete noobs.
Yeah,
there's going to be the one or two that just don't care because whatever, I can go raid or I can go in PvP stuff or whatever, I can get my experience back and I can brush off this corruption. But I think the people who are really sweaty about it and really just are in a don't give a shit type of mood, that there's gonna be so few of them that it is going to happen. You're gonna hear about it and it's gonna be news, and it's gonna be a rare thing. That's my prediction. We'll see though.
Yeah,
I do think, dude, it's a decent chance you'll be right because like I would, as I said earlier, I would be a bit of a PvPer, and I'd been known in World of Warcraft to kill lower level characters because I was a rogue and just sneak out of nowhere. It's just I was in a PV, what do you call it, the toggle server, so I was like, well, if you got your PvP on, you deserved it. But I'd be the kind of player who's done that once or twice in the past, but I wouldn't do it with the corruption, with the potential drawbacks. And I'd say there's probably a lot more people like me than the hardcore real just, like you say, don't care about punishment, just jerks that just want to kill people. Like I'd say they're in the massive minority, players like that. And if I end up engaging in PvP out in the world, there'll be a good reason for it. It'll not be running around trying to attack everybody that you can. It'll be, that guy did this to me, I'm gonna try and kill him now because of it, and it's worth the punishment, or it's not worth the punishment just for killing randomers.
Yeah, and I mean there's also the difference where you can toggle PvP, you can be I believe it's purple for you want to PvP, versus green for I don't want to PvP, but I know that you can hit me. That brings me to the next topic, which is actually this week's dev discussion, number 57, respawn times. How predictable do you like the spawn rate for general and rare mobs in open world, dungeons, and raid settings? So we've talked about players respawning. Let's talk about the monsters respawning and the predictability there, because there's also, where griefing could happen with the player being attacked. There's also the other type of griefing where people are maybe hoarding mobs because they know when they're gonna spawn and just sticking around there and then just wiping them out before you can get to them.
I think it's like a lot of things. I suppose Nash is going to be a delicate balancing act between two things. You can't have the spawn timer being so long and so random that there's a queue of people. Say it's a boss for a quest, that there's a queue of people trying to get the boss, and he's not spawning, and nobody's getting, or 50% of players or a low percentage of players are getting the kill. But you also can't have him spawning so often and so predictably that if he drops any kind of good loot, that people are just going to stand around and farm him, and potentially also then cause a backlog and people actually getting the quest. I think it does tie in to what you have to do to actually complete the quest. Say if it is a boss quest, do you just have to land a hit on him, or is it the first person who lands a hit, they get the kill no matter who does the damage, or is it what metric are they using for recording maybe the damage to the boss, whether you get the kill or not? If they have it so that if you just get a hit or two on him, that means 10 people or whatever, 20 people can get the kill at once, and then that will resolve a lot of the problems around completing the quest. But as I say then as well, if they're not doing that, then it's very delicate, I suppose, what time they pick. Because for me, if I was going to farm a boss and he was dropping some decent loot or something, I'd happily wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes for him to respawn. You're not going to wait half an hour, so it's probably going to be somewhere in between those two things. But you can't have it every 20 minutes if there's 100 people looking to kill him, and particularly in the early game, in the early days of the server, the early days of a game where the lower level areas are obviously going to be really, really busy with people, and you need to kind of plan for a full server as well as those other things I mentioned, I guess. So there's I don't know how they're gonna balance that, and I would say it's obviously going to be something that's going to be tested a lot in the alpha, and I think it'll be constantly iterated upon, and maybe even still after launch. I've played games before, MMOs, where that's been a problem and they've had to change the respawn timers for maybe specific bosses as opposed to all of them. But I think that's something that's very, very delicate, as I say, and there's a balance needing to be struck there.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
So, this question, the first one that they ask there, is how predictable for open world dungeons and raid settings? It's really difficult to answer with one answer, because open world, rare spawns and whatnot, I kind of like the random idea, but random within a decent window of predictability. It's either that or it has to be 100% random. Like, it might spawn in a minute or it might spawn in like 3 weeks. I mean, that drives collectors mad when they're trying to get specific like collectible gear from them.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing that gets people looking all the time for it. Like all the time. Like the time lost proto drake in WoW, where it's a ridiculous like window of time there. It could spawn or not spawn, who knows? Where it could spawn as a different creature instead, and you got to kill the other creature and wait for a respawn yet again. But people to this day, that was from the original Wrath release, like almost from the gate when Wrath came out, right? It existed. People are still to this day in live servers hunting down that mount that have been around since that day.
It still evades me.
That's how nuts they are about it. I mean, the rare mobs, I'm completely kind of open on however they want to do it, depending on what it is. If they want it to be really rare or really sought after, or get collectors drooling forever and everyone else looking, going, "You guys are crazy." That's kind of a neat thing.
Well, they're obviously that's for the rarest of ones. That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. Now the dungeons and raid gets more complicated, because if it's an instance dungeon or raid, I kind of like random, like the general mobs to respawn in about the time they expect a group to be able to clear the dungeon when they're quote unquote really prepared for it. That way it kind of gives you an idea, like, hey, trash is respawning. We're going real slow, guys. We got to pick it up next week or whatever. But
especially
when it's
if there's not going to
instance,
be damage meters, right? So that's a good indicator of your damage is low.
Yeah. Now, with everything, 80% of them being open world, this creates so many more problems. And the bosses especially need to be on a fairly strict respawn schedule, I think. Like, if not, it's going to be literally impossible to ever schedule a raid day with your guild. If you have no idea if any bosses in any dungeon are actually going to be spawned, it's going to make it literally impossible to raid with your guild. You're going to be like, hey, raid night Thursday. Which one? I don't know. We're going to try them all. See what happens. Maybe we'll raid.
Yeah.
If not, we'll go
this week
lumberjacking.
we'll get a boss.
Yeah.
If not, we'll go lumberjacking. So it has to be predictable.
I like what Aberrat says. They should be able to figure out some interesting open world spawn rules with the event system. I like that. Yeah. And with the event system feeding off of the world information and the node information, I think that has a lot to play into the potentials. But honestly, Nick's response, I kind of feel closely aligned with that, even though I've never played Lineage 2. Excuse me. Nick says general mobs should have timers depending on their difficulty. The easier it is to kill the mobs, the faster it should respawn. Easiest mobs would most likely be solo content, and solo content should support as many people as you want for proper balancing. Hardcore/party mobs should have a longer respawn because they should spend most of the group's resources, mana, HP, and buffs. Rare mobs should be about 12 hours in my opinion, with bosses being around 24 plus or minus 1 hour. Rare and epic bosses add a variety of respawns from 2 days up to 2 weeks. Don't care for differences between open world and dungeon, because those should usually be separated by difficulty, and I already expressed my preferences there. And I found that as an interesting breakdown of things, and I kind of find myself agreeing with that, as well as some of the other points that you guys made. With the open world dungeons being something that anybody can come into, it would kind of suck if, you get there and then you can't really attack the boss anymore because somebody, like, as you got there, like, they killed it, and now it could be like maybe tomorrow at some point he'll spawn, or it could be 12 hours from now he might spawn. But that's a very long time, right? So if you're trying to get stuff done, it's a little difficult. I'm interested in seeing how they balance this. For me, I am open-minded. I do think there needs to be a balance between what it is you need these bosses for. If it's an ultra rare item that it's dropping, by all means, make it rare, make it like once every 12 to 24 hours. I'm fine with that. If it's something that is a little bit more common, maybe an uncommon item, then make that shorter, like 6 hours maximum, maybe even 3 instead. But I think it should be based on how often you need to access whatever is on that loot table, and the type of thing that loot table has. So if you're trying to kill a boss or a mob in general for a quest, something that is a lot of people are going to be needing, that should have a faster respawn, in my opinion, compared to something that is a rare item to do that crafting thing that you've been spending weeks trying to collect the materials for. That one I could see being on a little bit longer of a respawn timer because it's a more rare item. It's a higher grade crafting skill, like a really good chest piece or something. It's the next level up kind of thing.
Yeah. No, this is another one of my, I guess, not really hot button, but I guess passionate subjects. It's going to be like the boss timers and such, because the reason it can't really be random or really long or unpredictable with the open world dungeons and raids. So the party size is supposed to be 8, which is the normal size of a raid in most games. Or close to, I should say. Normally it's like 10 people, right? So it's close to. So it's already going to be harder to find people to fill an 8-person party to go into a dungeon than it is normally in many other games. And many other games already have big issues with guilds not being able to field a 10-man raid all the time. They always have to pug other people and whatnot. So there's already a difficulty with 8-man. Now, if the raid size is 16 and or 40 that Stephen was talking about, how excited do you think 40 people are going to be if they have no idea if there's actually going to be a raid? How many 40-man raids do you think there are going to be outside of the 300-person guilds that are trying to dominate the server? They're going to be the only 40-man raid, and they're going to dominate that raid. Mm-hmm. In theory. Guinness, I mean, we'll see.
Guinness, it sounded like you had something you wanted to add.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you say there about the 40-man raids, like that's gonna be we all know how difficult they are to put together, as is difficult to put the 25. It's even difficult to get the 8 or 10 men together. You know, if you're not guaranteed that you're going to have content to complete, those people are going to start leaving that raid really quick. You know, if you rock up to the first boss and he's not there, and we're like, okay, well, we might have to wait 10 minutes, we might have to wait 12 hours, you know, like it's gonna be dead on arrival, the raid is, and you're not going to complete anything. And when you're dealing with open world content, then I suppose that's always a risk. But if you're also then dealing with an open world boss that needs that amount of people to kill it, it's not going to be too many random guys just going around taking them down. You know, for those most extreme or most elite raids and the highest bosses, if you can get the guys together, you can almost be sure they're going to be there, depending on how busy your server is, and if you have any of those top guilds that you're talking about in it, then maybe it's not guaranteed. But yeah, it's going to be a very difficult one, I think, for them to balance, as I said, and be interesting to see what they come up with. But I can almost guarantee it will be tweaked a lot, whatever their original implementation is in Alpha 2. Has to be, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's probably going to take a while. That's why a lot of people are hoping for a short alpha, but I think it's going to be a long one.
Yeah,
there's so many variables to Ashes. So many.
There's also a lot of classes that they have to implement, and by the end of alpha, they all need to be done. So I don't see it being short.
What's the definition of short? Because I'm thinking in my head at least a year, but probably 2. Like I think Stephen said before that the betas would be short, so I'm assuming both of them will be done over a few months, maybe.
Possibly.
You know, certainly less than 6 months. But Alpha 2, I don't know.
I think Alpha 1 was only a few months. If I'm recalling, from like July to like maybe September or August, somewhere around there.
It's not too bad, but yeah, I suppose we'll know more when it actually launches, because we'll know what's included in it, and you'll know then when you play a test, you'll be like, well, we're a wee bit away, or this actually feels almost not quite a complete game, but not far off, you know.
Yeah, and I was spot testing at that. That's right, Sarensington. All right. So the next topic is the Metropolis. So let's say a Metropolis is besieged and destroyed. Later, it makes it back to a Metropolis again. What's different? And the things I've saw in the comments are about the node. I guess the type of node could change when you siege it, and it has to rebuild. And then also whoever is the mayor and like what kind of things are contributed to that. So what do you think of that? Does it create a nice, long-lasting replayability with this node system then? Or is it one of those, like, you'd prefer if it maybe stayed the same type, potentially?
I think if you're dealing with a Metropolis that a lot of people have put the work into to get up to that level, and then it gets sieged and destroyed, like, I think that area is going to stay vacant for quite a while. I mean, there is going to be a window, I suppose, where it's just a destroyed node where you can't actually build it up. But even like I think there'll be a lot of players that they'll be disheartened by that. But at least in the short term, they'll be disheartened. But in the long term, and some players might actually quit. You know, if you spent your whole game time, say you've been playing a game for 6 months or something, and you've spent all of that time in the one node and working towards being maybe the guild that's working towards that node and getting a mayor in it and stuff like that would be, at least as I say, in the short term, would be massively disheartening, I think. But then if you're a longer term player and you're looking at the big picture of the node, you'd use it as a reason, I suppose, to move elsewhere, because otherwise, without the node being destroyed, you were staying there forever. Like, you know, you'd made that perfectly clear by spending your first 6 months there. But that being said, it's actually referring to the question. I think even if everything was kept the same, which would never happen. But say the node type was kept the same, the mayor was kept the same, and you're talking over presumably here many months to get from node level 1 to node level 5. Even if all of that was kept the same, as I say, which would never happen, the node would still be completely different. I think like the buildings would be in different places. There'd probably be different buildings chosen because the mayor would have learned from maybe previous mistakes. And with how dynamic the node system is, I genuinely believe that across all the different servers and all the different nodes, I don't think there'll be 2 nodes exactly the same, even across, like, no matter how many tens of thousands of nodes there are across all the servers. Even if you put the military node in the same place and players building it up at the same rate, like across 100 servers, they'll never be the same because of the amount of the amount of choices that we seem to have with buildings, and then presumably the choices that we'll have with the node types. And it's something that the node system does really excite me with how vast it seems to be. Now, of course, what comes with that is a whole lot of difficulty from the devs' point of view, to pull it off, because what they're trying is phenomenal with how player activity interacts with the nodes, and therefore how different, as I say, across the servers the nodes will be.
Right.
Yeah, we have another win with the teapot. Yeah, Snickers, if you're gonna chug, you chug. Use all tools at disposal. Chug it, get it down. So the Metropolis thing. I know there's a lot of stuff that's set in stone, like the node type is going to be the same, the scientific, religious, etc. So that one's not going to change. There was actually some discussion on that post about it, but I think some folks just didn't realize that wasn't going to change. The race stuff, this stuff. The one thing that I found interesting in that whole conversation, though, was I don't think it's been clarified if the individual plots where you can place your special buildings are going to change, or if that's procedurally generated too. Like where you're going to put the blacksmith, if you decide to put one in town. Where you're going to put the whatever other ancillary buildings. Are those going to shift around procedurally or not? That's what I'm curious about.
I think that the plots are all predetermined by the devs. I think they announced that on the Node live stream. So the plots are predetermined, but they're universal plots in that you can put any building on any one plot. So even if you were to build all the exact same buildings, like, you would probably have them in different places than you did the first time.
I think it might be what you said, predetermined or like fixed, but there's also different types of Metropolis, right? So there's the one that, or like even the village, I guess, that we saw where it had the 2-tier, right? There was like the upper hill area that was overlooking the rest of the city. So that might even potentially change as well. I'm not sure. So if it was a 2-tier at one point and then it got besieged, and then a different race came through that was predominantly questing in that area, and it changed the architecture to be that racial, I wonder if it also adjusts, if it would still be the 2-tier when it gets back to that same level, or if it would be a different lay of the land because it was technically sieged.
I would
Very curious.
Assume that will stay the same, just because those are like geographic things, that maybe wouldn't change. But it would be awesome if, like you said there about the 2-tier and the hill and the one that we actually seen, it'd be awesome if elves owned that and they built on top of it, and then next time around dwarves owned it and they built into the hill. Now that would be cool. If they could bring that into it, that would be awesome. That they turned it into a bit of a cave or a mine.
Yeah. Oh, Sir Ensington, yeah, I agree. That'd be awesome. Some stuff from chat, just because I don't want them to get lost. First off, Snickers, thank you so very much for the resub. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate it. 13 months. Abra says it would become a vassal to surrounding nodes, never to be metro again, wouldn't it? And that's not necessarily true. I think, like what Nair said, unless you nuke the vassals too and rebuild.
If they're taking out a Metropolis, that seems likely. You're going to take out everything. Whoever managed it.
Well, whatever one was waiting to be a Metropolis next would be the next Metropolis, I believe. because you'd have to start from ground one again. But the node type I believe is static. I was just reading what some people were saying in the responses to that post. And we have an ad starting in like 3 minutes. No, I had no idea Nara was so bloodthirsty. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can be different. You know, I think there's a lot of replayability in it. The different races have different quest lines, different architecture. Like you said, that'd be really neat if they could build into the side of the hill if it's a dwarven race versus an elven race that has more of a natural theme to it for Pyre, or Empyrean theme to it for the Empyreans. But I'm interested in seeing how they handle that. But I think it adds to it. I think there's reason to keep trying and to keep rebuilding. Plus, the different things that you might unlock as a new mayor for this, with a new type of racial halls of Moria Metro. So I think we're going to move into player conflict and talk about PvP arenas. And I'm going to go ahead and copy the link over so that you guys can read that. And so if you have a Twitch sub, you're not going to be affected by the incoming ad. If you don't, I apologize, but this is what we're talking about next.
Yeah, so PvP arenas. This is one that they can get kind of interesting. And generally, the post here was talking about what would be the perfect PvP arena. It'd be better to have more team size variety, or different variety than most games have. Say instead of the usual like 1, 2, 3, 5, going something more like maybe 1, 2, 4, 8. Just because of how they're balancing out the classes to be in a team setup. Should there be instanced PvP arenas? Should they be open world? Should there be PvE arenas, like gauntlet runs and like boss gauntlets and even swarms of little guy gauntlets, that type of thing? What do you feel on that subject there, Guinness?
Well, first thing I have to say to Nara there in chat that his father was a hamster. Just looking at his his comment about elderberries. The PvP arenas, well, first of all, the easiest part to answer, I suppose, is the instanced element. I think it has to be. I think they have to be instanced. I think when you're talking about an arena, you're talking about the elite, going against each other in a very, very fair arena, obviously. And if it's not instanced, then you're going to have all sorts of people up at the top. All sorts of people looking down on the arena or whatever, and they're going to be doing AoEs, and they're going to be throwing, even if they can't do damage to the players, which presumably they'll not be able to, they're going to be putting them off. And it for me, it takes away from that elite feeling of, okay, here I am with my buddies trying to take on this other team here, whether it's 2v2, 3v3. It's important, and that's where arenas have a very different feeling than larger battlegrounds have, because of that element. And I do think it would be taken away from them if they weren't instanced. As for the idea that the original poster had there for PvE arenas definitely intrigues me. It's not something I've ever thought of before. Where you saying about maybe like a gauntlet run against bosses, which, to be honest, even if it was just end game content, sounds awesome to me. It would be a great way for the devs to actually be able to reuse bosses, particularly lower level bosses. Say have a level 20 dungeon that they put a lot of effort in, and you're only going to do that dungeon a couple of times at the most, if you even do. Whereas it would be a great way for them to reuse those bosses, and then obviously scale them up maybe to level 50, and you could have this just as end game content. That would be fine. And then have heroic modes and stuff of it. That's definitely a good idea. And anything that adds a bit more content to the end game, I'm all for. And if you don't like it, you don't have to do it, essentially.
Yeah.
And then you said, yes, about the team sizes as well. I think larger arenas, like an 8v8, it loses a bit, as I said earlier, about the arena feel. It starts to become more like a battleground and more like almost not quite a free-for-all, but it's very difficult to have proper team play when you're dealing with 8 people in your team. 2v2 and 3v3, they're the big ones for me that should exist, and they take a lot of tactics and team play, and you get used to the guys you're playing with, and you're always playing with the same guys, so they're your arena buddies. Whereas in an 8v8, I'd say that's very hard to actually keep the same 8 together. And I think you start once you get beyond even 5's quite a lot, but I can understand why it exists. But once you get beyond that number, like, it starts to become, for me, less like an arena feel. For me, that, as I say, 2's and 3's are the most fun, and they're if you want an 8v8, then you might as well be doing just some of I presume there'll be maybe battlegrounds or larger PvP content. That's what that would start to feel like, to me anyway.
Gotcha. Now, another thing that was tacked on in that was talking about cross-server arena queues, as well as being able to queue for arena from anywhere versus needing to go to a central hub.
Suppose that would tie into wait times. If you have to go to a central hub, that's okay, as long as you're able to get in relatively quickly. But then having to go to the central hub then is presumably going to increase wait times, as opposed to people just queuing when they're out questing. I think, by the way, they seem to be setting up the game that with the no fast travel and a couple of different things, it would make me think that it will be a central hub, and they'll try and push people towards like a certain area you want to go to. If you want to obviously go to the arenas, you're known to have to go here, and then everybody outside is obviously queuing, and I suppose you're eyeing up the competition while you're standing there queuing, whereas you can lose a bit of when the looking for group element, whether it be for PvP or PvE content. I think you can lose a bit of that camaraderie that you have, even if it's with a random party that you've met just outside the arena or whatever. I think once you bring that in, then people are just out questing, and then they just get into the queue and they join. And it was one thing I actually noticed in later years of World of Warcraft, that in the earlier days when I played it most, when there was no looking for a group, so you find people through chat and you talk to them, and you maybe got to know each other a bit while you were trying to get other players into the group. Whereas once they brought in the looking for group, you were, especially cross server, like people weren't even saying hello, they're just joining the party, let's get this content done, and then leaving again, and you lose a bit. For me, you lost a bit of the multiplayer element of the MMO. Yes, you're playing with other people, but you might as well have been playing with bots or NPCs. So for me, I'm sort of against the looking for group, but I do understand why it can become a necessity if servers start to lose population and the game in general starts to lose population.
Yeah. Sir Ensington says the event system seems like it's an open arena PvE. Esthea says, I prefer 10v10 up to 20v20. 2v2 and 3v3 is a higher adrenaline rush, though.
Oh, it definitely is.
So, also, Central Hub would make arena titles more valuable. Sorry, go ahead, Verted.
2v2s and 3v3s are the things that give you sweaty hands on your mouse and on your keyboard. and heart palpitations.
True story. Esthea's over here trying to go for the PvP raids. 10 and 20 versus 10 and 20. It's bordering on that large scale open world PvP. But yeah, I don't know. I feel that there's a lot of the game that's already dedicated to PvP, and if it's not dedicated to PvP, then it's requiring interaction with PvP. There is exactly 20% of the raids and 20% of the dungeons that are catering to PvE. Everything else in the game is either catering to PvP or is purposely introducing PvP as a core concept. So I think it should only be fair feeling to kind of apply the same kind of concepts. And what I mean by that is make some of the PvP arenas open world. Like, if people are going to interfere, they're going to interfere, right? Like, let them throw down bananas and stuff. Put up a power dampening field, let's say, where if somebody does interfere, they're not going to be doing as much damage. But so be it. You're in an arena, right? You're in the open world. Put a guard out there that'll maybe try to beat them up or something. Yeah. But that's also me just saying, well, you guys can deal with it too, right? But also the travel thing, the queuing up from anywhere for a PvP queue, I think also gets rid of that travel means something. You should have to go to a hub and maybe even make a military node. The upper echelon, like that's the only place you can go for insert certain features, like scoreboards, and that's where you have to go to actually do something interesting but not required. Like, you don't want all of your major gear purchases and funding where you have to take like arena points and buy special gear. You don't want those to just be at the military node, because what if there's not a military node? There probably will be, as far as like a metro or something like that, but I don't know. Maybe they could leave it at say a tier 3 and above could have the registration and gear turn-ins, but you have to go to a military node for that.
But if a whole server is missing out on a large part of the game because there's no military node up to the Metropolis level, that server is going to work hard to make sure there is, and I think that's sort of part of what the devs are trying to push, is to have a crazy amount, like a crazy amount of player interaction, and something I don't think we've ever seen the level of player interaction in any game before, and with regard to how important it is for progressing the server. And therefore it wouldn't actually surprise me, like it would obviously make sense to have the PvP, the higher end stuff like the arenas and whatnot linked to a military node, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it had to be a higher level military node. But you can be sure, if that's the case, every server will have at least one guild that is pushing, probably several, like, that is pushing to max that military node. In fact, if that was the case, I would think it would be the first node maxed, or the first node type maxed, because of that, if it's controlling or gating that much content.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it develops. And hey there, Marcus, welcome in, by the way.
Yeah.
As Theo was saying there, I hope players actually want that much player interaction and commingling of all the different play types, and requiring people to group up, because all the content's going to be hard that you really can't solo through the game. I kind of hope that ends up being a thing that people find interest in. If not, it's going to need some adjustment down the line. But I hope so.
It could be game breaking if they don't get that balance right, because I think the community as a whole will push in the same direction if they need to, but if there's always going to be those who don't, and if the devs don't get that balance right, it could be like catastrophic for the game.
yeah, because I can totally see the draw and the desire to go back to the more social days of MMOs. Absolutely, I remember them very fondly as well, but I also have to myself recognize that modern conveniences have made people want modern conveniences. Like the Amish, they get around just fine on their horse and buggies, just like great-great-grandpa did. But we have cars now, and nobody outside of the Amish purposely gets a horse and buggy unless they're living on a farm, and that's just, how they're hauling around their stuff because they don't want to start up a car or a truck. So it's a thing. So we'll have to see how people react to it as a whole, like as a large community, right?
We're dealing with a different age group as well when you're talking about gamers. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people of my age, and I'll tell you what that is, looking to play Ashes, but there's also going to be a whole plethora of people half my age looking to play it, and they've grown up in a different world of gaming, and with something with a wee bit more, like you say, some things are a wee bit easier, and modern games are a wee bit easier, more straightforward in a lot of ways. I've got used to that, but at the same time, I do think Stephen is an Intrepider trying to go towards more my age group of audience, the people that grew up maybe playing WoW, but now maybe aren't so happy with how it and other MMOs have the direction that they've went in. So that gives me hope. The fact that he is a bit older than me, but not by much.
I think another thing, maybe instead of like a queuing system, that would make it a little bit more accessible to the nodes that don't have a military node near them, is maybe talk to a certain NPC who's like a battle master NPC, and then they can put you in kind of like a queue, and maybe like instance you or phase you into a certain area where you can like chat with others, or maybe like a little introductory, if you're interested in doing that, a little introductory quest or like a series of dialogue things to unlock the looking for group for the arenas. I'm personally not a PvP person, so I really don't have one way or another on this, but I'm just trying to think of ways that might help others, especially with how vast the world sorry, mind is blinking at the moment. Goodness. Like Abarat said, the world is huge, compared to the games that we're used to playing. So having to travel all the way to a metropolis or a certain level node that is military, that might literally be across the world from you if you don't have one built up. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Taking hours to get there wouldn't be
exactly
ideal, but at the same time, that does then tie into the importance of travel, and then ultimately what you end up doing if you're a PvPer and it is limited in some way to the military node, to the biggest military node in the server, that military node ends up becoming your home. And simple as that, and that's where you spend your time, and that's where you try and get your freehold and try to do this and that, but it ultimately will be dictated to by that, and then that's also then where there'll be life. There'll always be PvPers, and maybe in a way, if the PvP is linked to the military node, to the biggest military node, then that's going to be the node that's trying to take over everybody, because it's full of the PvPers and they're all living there, which makes sense. It is the military node, so maybe if you're building up your economic node, keep that in mind and stay well away from military nodes that look likely to be busy. Mm-hmm. To me, that makes sense if they do go in that direction and have no queuing system at all. But the risk is then, if server population ever drops or general game population ever drops, they may be forced to bring it in, both for PvP and PvE, because much not as I'd rather play with people who I'm chatting to and I've met maybe in the actual game world, as opposed to just through a queuing system. The only thing worse than beating them through the queuing system is not being able to meet people at all and not having a group to go into content with. So that can never be the outcome. I think their hands could actually be tied depending on popularity of the game and whether population drops after a couple of months after launch, or how that works out for them, which obviously can't really be planned for because nobody knows how it's going to go.
Yeah. All right, so we are creeping up on speeding through this. We've already been here for an hour. Time does fly.
Sorry, I'm a waffler.
Oh, that's fine. I love when we get into topics and we talk about them. I just wanted to call out the time and say that we got a couple other topics. We're going to see if we can do some speed rounds through. Do a quick little let's see if we can knock them out in about 3 sentences or so. Now, to do that, we should pick one of these that we actually want to finish up with. That way we can have our goal. If we make it through everything else, we get the goal. Which one of the remaining topics would you say is the one you're most interested in chatting about?
The metrics, probably, to be honest, about organized conflict.
Okay. And Chibi, what do you think?
I don't have a preference.
Okay. Because I was really curious about that You know, instead of you choosing to follow a god's religion, what if the god chose you because of your playstyle? Now, I know that's pure theory crafting because I know that's not something they're trying to get into Ashes, but it was just a neat topic. So okay, let's.
That was a fantastic idea. Sorry, go on ahead.
Yeah, it is. It is a really cool idea. It is. So let's do the metrics, but let's make that our goal. That'll be the last one we hit if we can make it through everything else. And we'll frame it instead of just there going through like PvP stuff. We'll talk about PvE and PvP if we had scoreboards for stuff for all the across the entire spectrum. But real quick, the last thing I did want to say about the arena thing. What I've noticed is really interesting is this entire time that everyone's been talking about travel is really important. Travel is really important. With raids and dungeons, you're gonna have to travel across the map, and that's cool. A 40-man raid having to travel hours across a map to get to a specific raid is perfectly fine. But then when PvP comes into account, oh no, travel's gonna destroy it. And that's just going by the conversation in that post. A lot of people were saying that travel was going to kill PvP arenas if you had to travel across a map to get to one. And I just thought that was an interesting thought. Nobody brought up travel killing raids because you had to take 40 people and go across a map. Just something to think about. But okay, so speed rounds. We got 3 sentences or less. Honor systems for players. Good or bad? Better designs than others? Should they be systematic only, like your actual actions inside the game register little points based on your achievements and little things that you do? Or should it be player rating only, where maybe the player rating that you give somebody is applicable only to you, only you see it, but now you know if you've run with them before and they're a terrible person or not? What do you think?
I think that the player rating's a dangerous one. I think that's something that can be definitely manipulated by the bad actors out there, and it's something I would definitely stay away from. Try to make this quick as possible. The systematic one, possibly getting players certain ratings, but then everybody would have to see that, and then again I do think people could work out how to manipulate that, and not everybody would, but some people definitely would if they thought it was to their advantage. I was happy with a good old-fashioned honor system in World of Warcraft, like when it came to just honor points for PvP content. Simple, and then you maybe get PvP gear with that. And then I also know that Stephen mentioned a different type of honor system, not called the honor system, for religion, and doing something similar with that for religious quests would be fine by me. I don't think it has to be overly complicated.
Yeah, I like the idea of an honor system. I think it'd be pretty cool if there was a systematic one, like every time you insert something you did, like fought somebody fairly, like a one-on-one, you would maybe gain an honor point, but if it was 2v1 or 3v1, then you would lose some honor on that. Because you didn't face up and do a one-on-one, like out in open world. Like just stuff like that, like things that are easy to flag and mark down in your history. What do you think, Chibi?
I think that if there's going to be an honor system, it should be purely from the game standpoint. I dislike the idea of player rating. We see that easily on Reddit. If somebody doesn't like something, they downvote the heck out of it. So if your honor is left to other players and people are just being trolls, they're going to ruin your reputation just because it's something that they can do. I'd rather it not be something that somebody else has the ability to. I do like the commendments system within Final Fantasy XIV, though, where if you enjoyed the way somebody played, you can commendate them, but there was no negative deficit that you could attribute to them.
I mean, well then...
Good work. Remove the negativity from it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well then, real quick, just to get you a quick, like, yay or nay, how about the suggestion someone had about player rating only being visible to you and how you rate players so that you know in the future?
I only like Stockholm. What was the question again?
That's probably would work, but it's more like a thumbs up in your own record as opposed to
basically
outside influence on that player's rating because you're the only one that sees it. That could work, but it's almost just like adding a friend on your battle.net. You know, it's somebody that I've played with and they're pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, the main question there, TP, was if you like or dislike the idea of having a rating system that only you can see the ratings that you put in, and it's basically there for you. Like every time you have a bad run with somebody, you give them another negative point, but if you have a good run, you give them a positive.
Kind of like an Uber or a Yelp review, where you can see like what your review of something is. So if you don't like a person, you don't get matched up with them potentially again. I kind of like that. It's for your own personal, because like, again, there's like who knows how many people in the world. So having your own personal note on like, you did not enjoy playing with this person before, that would be helpful, but I just don't know. I don't know where that would live within everything.
Yeah. It'd be kind of interesting to see it happen though. I'd be curious.
Yeah.
All right, so next topic, again, super fast, mainly because this one isn't really up for like debate, discussion, theory crafting. They've kind of said how they stand on this, and that's instanced dungeons and raids. Cross server, single server, no LFG, LFG only for your single server, etc.
There should never be a cross server with ashes. That shouldn't exist.
I agree, but as I said earlier, I would generally disagree with the looking for group, at least in the early days. If they have to do it, they have to do it if people are struggling to find people. But I do think the instance thing's funny. I think those percentages will change. We said it was 20% in instance, didn't he? I think that's too low. For the amount of times he says it's a PvX game as opposed to a PvP game, I would have thought it would be closer to 50-50, but we'll see. We'll see whether it changes.
Ashes is going to be very different from server to server. So even if there is an LFG, it should not be cross server. That would not make any sense. Mm-hmm. No two servers are going to be exactly the same. So cross server just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, not at all.
Wouldn't work. Yeah.
In terms of single server LFG, I mean, I could see it, but I think that Intrepid and Steven specifically are aiming for that older, like classic WoW feeling where there is not an LFG, to kind of promote conversation and friendship making through looking for groups and chatting. So, I mean, I've not had any issues making friends through an LFG. It's grouped me up with people I never would have thought to run with before. But on the flip side, there's also the login, do the LFG, just ignore chat because you don't care, and then get your dailies out of the way and then get back off.
And leave. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to LFG or not to LFG, that's neither here nor there for me. I can handle both. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Cross server thing, like you said, I don't believe in cross server anything. Even as Nair was saying, like the server v server PvP.
Yeah.
I don't think any of that should really be a thing.
Wait, what if there was a thing where, like, because you had to combine two servers, it was like a calamity, so you had to do a server v server, and the winning server got to be the main server?
Yeah, it gets to be the nodes and stuff.
Actually, that would
be awesome.
I think that's something we had talked about before, like how would server merges work, and I think that came up in our conversation before, was there should be an all-out calamity, like both of them have like a month-long countdown to just devastation, and then it's a literal all-out war, server v server on everything, and the winning server actually gets to keep all their stuff and the other server has to restart.
Yeah,
amazing.
You have a countdown, and then you have to go through the portals that you got into from Sanctus, and it takes you to this like voidless land of like one server versus another. I don't know, that would just be a little too extra.
That'd be so much work.
I just think it'd be really cool to have like a server v server for the winning server in general, though.
Yeah.
I just trying to figure out how that would work in general. Like, do you just leave through the portals and then you arrive in the new server? I don't know.
Bring all your carts and your animals and your farm with you.
Yeah.
Abrat says, imagine showing off armor that was not available on another server.
Yeah, and that'd be pretty cool, but one of my big things and why I say it shouldn't exist is because of how imbalanced the PvE versus PvP is in the game. if you give PvP cross server but PvE does not,
Yeah.
then it's never really going to give a real impression on how dead a server really is, because people are still going to be active doing PvP stuff, right? But then all the PvP people are going to be dropping like flies, and then it's going to be nothing but PvP, and that's it, because they're the only ones who are going to still have action. PvP people or PvE people aren't going to be around as much. It's going to be fully kept alive by PvP, and that's it. And because you're doing server v server stuff, and you can always cross over and queue with people from other servers, it's always going to feel active.
Right.
And then it's going to devolve into there's 12 people on one server queuing up, but they don't do anything besides queue up for PvP. The end.
Right.
I know there's more to it than that, but that's the basis for my thoughts on it anyway. I haven't thought about it terribly deeply, but that's just it. That's a surface level. All right. So, how about the topic of the gods? So let's say instead of you choosing a god to follow with their religion, this post here was talking about going and just playing a game as normal, and after a certain amount of time, if you play a certain play style, one of the gods will reach out to you and say, hey, you're a pretty cool cat. Want to follow my religion? And they'll recruit you into their religion, and through some proving, etc., etc. How neat would that be?
Would be absolutely awesome. When I read that idea, I thought, wow, that's the kind of dynamic thing that Ashes actually would put in. But if they're going to put that in, it would need to be well underway by now, because it sounds like it would be pretty big, because you're obviously going to need to have a number of different gods. And I think it would be hilarious if you actually were trying to push to get a particular god, if you're more military orientated and trying to get the military god to come to you in your dreams, say, and recruit you, and then you actually did a little bit too much farming on your freehold, and the wheat, the god of wheat came for you instead.
Yeah.
It would be hilarious.
I know that there's the predetermined 7 or so, but I don't know. I think it could be capable. Like if a node system can keep track of how many kills you're doing, maybe the god of war would like you. If you're primarily doing a bunch of PvP, maybe the god of death would like you, or something like that. If you're constantly I don't know, running around healing people for fun who you're not grouped up with, maybe the goddess of light or something would like you. I feel like it's something that they could totally tap into if they wanted to, but I do agree it would probably add a lot to the development.
It has the potential to be huge, the same as and obviously with the node system, and they have the capability, of course, but yeah, whether they want to, or I'd say that's already set in stone.
Yeah.
Roughly, either going with the gods system.
People would be hoping for one of the others. Yeah, absolutely. The ones that are constantly getting corrupted are hoping for one of the others. Sorry, John. I didn't actually bring you out here to pick berries together. You see, I've been trying to gain Hades' attention.
And now I'm going to kill you.
Prepare to die.
Yeah. I'm sacrificing you to Hades.
Yeah.
Alright, so we have a very super quick short time to get this last one in, so we got to be super fast. That is the metric system. This has got to be a speed round also. Okay. So start thinking about it. What would you say would be the top 5, let's say, metrics that you could see being important, and in which organized conflict? So name your favorite organized conflict, PvE or PvP, sieges, arenas, guild wars, raids, any of the random events, caravans, that type of thing. If there's going to be any kind of metric saved and displayed and or kept the record of, so people can place the best of, insert whatever it is. What event would it be, and what would those metrics be?
I think for the different types of events, I feel like the metrics would be mostly the same. Here, obviously, you're going to go for the major ones, or the obvious ones are most damage done and most healing done. But I think there has to be 20 or 30 or 50, I don't know, running at once for it to actually be fair. Because you have the utility characters that are never going to be highest on damage, never going to be highest on healing, but they could be doing the most important job in the field by buffing their allies or CCing enemies. So I think there has to be metrics like that. The amount of CCs you did to enemies, the amount of CCs you broke on your allies, the amount of buffs you give your allies, the amount of damage that your buffs added to your allies' damage should sort of count towards your own in a way. Like, I think there's so much depth to it and so much thinking that obviously it's going to be difficult to cover in a speed run, but yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it, really.
All right, TV.
I honestly don't really know how to answer that, especially with the scoreboards. Like, I don't know. It's very hard to say for me.
Okay, so I'll speak on the term, because everyone's always thinking of the PvP stuff. So even that discussion actually had a lot of talk about PvP stuff. So I'll cover a little PvE stuff in my wish list there. So let's say raids, right? I would love it if there were, for tanks, let's say damage mitigated per damage thrown at me, or damage taken as opposed to party damage taken. CCs put out, like you were saying, stuns, interrupts, intercepting damage, taunts thrown, successful taunts thrown, where something was aggro on somebody else and you literally taunted it from attacking somebody else, instead of just throwing out your taunts in a rotation on a boss that you already have the aggro for. Like, that wouldn't count on it. Things like healing and overhealing, effective stuns, and how about things like when something starts to get stun immunity, then you get half point damage or half point tallied or something like that, because you're just re-stunning the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
absorb damage as well for those kind of healers that are more damage prevention rather than outright healing.
And then specific metrics for each raid and dungeon based on what the bosses can do and what their environment is, like time spent in lava or time avoiding lava, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think those would be kind of neat.
It'd be awesome. I think that, well, they have to have hundreds of them. I played a game before. I'll not name it because I'm going to berate it. But it was just all damage done. It was the only metric. They had a scoreboard up in the top left when you're doing damage to bosses. That was it. There wasn't even a healing. It was just damage. And that kind of thing is insane. Like.
And by the way, just a callback, Marcus says, if you choose the right god and die, would you be reincarnated as an NPC?
Yeah.
Neat. I actually just read through that whole one. I glanced at it earlier, but I just read through the whole thing. Yeah, that's a neat concept. But either way, we should probably be wrapping up here. So Guinness Gamer, do you have any closing comments? Do you have anything you'd like to share? Any projects coming up? Any special love you'd like to give to everyone out there?
Well, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you to the two of you for hosting me. It's been great. I hope to be here again at some point in the future. But yeah, I just can't wait for Alpha 2, like a whole lot of people that are signed up for it. And I hope this game has even half of the potential. If it meets half of the potential that it has, then I'll be a very happy boy.
Agreed.
Thank you, Sir Onsington.
I just wanted to put out there, by the way, that we're not doing the video game thing tomorrow night. We're doing it on Sunday instead. And going forward, it may not be with Annie and Jamie. It may just be Vertek. It may eventually be Vertek and myself. It kind of depends on what's going on. But we're not going to be here tomorrow. So that's my little PSA I wanted to get out there beforehand. But the thing I'm taking away from this whole thing is Ashes is really large. And there's a lot of systems to it.
Mm-hmm. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I'm going to go ahead and get us prepped up to raid over to Vladis as late as we are getting over to him. But Vertek, what did you take away from this?
But kind of like you said, there's so many things out there. We're still kind of theory crafting a bunch of stuff. There's some things that are just so in depth we can't really talk about everything in its entirety. And then even if we did, we'd probably end up being wrong by the time it comes out and releases anyway. So it's fun talking about everything, but everything is still subject to change, everybody. It's a good thing to keep in mind.
It's cut off.
Oh, I'm gonna have to see what I can do about fixing that.
Sorry, Sir Ansington. Yeah, thank you, Estella. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are very glad that you joined us and that you had the pleasure of welcoming Guinness Gamer on with us. We hope that you check him out and give him a follow on his YouTube page and check out the stuff that he's making.
Thank you so much for joining us, everybody.
Guys.
Thank you so much for the chats. Thank you so much for the subs.
Yes.
The greatest support you can possibly give us is just being here and existing and saying hi and just hanging out with us, existing in the same space and sharing words.
And we're losing time.
Amazing. Yeah, we're losing time. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. But until then, take care. And
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you.